All right, welcome to Heath Barn Hoopcast. This is part two with former Flying Illini Marcus Liberty. Part one was great, and part two he just picks right up where he left off. He's talking about Coach Henson still, talks about how close he was to even transferring, talks about his relationship on and off the court with Coach, and he talks about kind of his role at Illinois in general, things like that. We get into him going into the NBA draft, what he did on draft night, where he thought he was going to go, where he ended up going. He talks about his NBA career with Denver, and then he talks about getting traded to Detroit and playing for the Pistons, and he talks about Isiah Thomas, and that's pretty juicy, some of the stuff he says Isiah did while he was in Detroit, so that's definitely worth a listen. He goes overseas, talks about his time over there, and then we get into what he's up to now, his thoughts on the game, some of his favorite players to watch, and everything like that. But he does a very good job of just kind of letting it rip and is very honest in his thoughts and his opinions and things like that. And so I really appreciate it. But again, part one was great, and part two he just keeps it going. So hope you enjoy.
Part two with former Flying Illini Marcus Liberty.
Urban Small, who was my roommate on the road. Jimmy Collins, of course, many times. Not even gonna say it was like a lot, but it was at least 2 or 3 times that I actually thought about leaving and transferring.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that. But back then, my gosh, it was such a pain in the butt to transfer. It's like,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Back, like you said, back then, I had the thought, and then I started to think the consequences. Like, if I transfer, I'm going to sit out. I don't want to sit out. I already set out, my freshman year. So if I transfer, then that's another year I'm going to have to sit out. So I was like, no, I'm gonna go ahead and stick this one out, and I'm gonna have to deal with Coach Henson, in the best way I can, So I did that, and the rest was history. After that, I started to, believe in him a little bit more, and he started believing in me a little bit more, and that's what happened. But people would think that me and Coach Henson had a great relationship. But we didn't. I mean, we it was strictly a coach-player relationship. It was nothing else beyond that, like you see with other coaches now.
Yeah.
But I'm a coach now. I'm doing a lot, in this area, and all of the things that I went through, I try to tell kids, now. Make sure you pick the school. Make sure you go to practice. Make sure you go to unexpected. Like, the coach don't expect you to show up at practice, but you show up, so you can see how he's interacting with certain players, and especially they star players or guys who's highly recruited. Look at how they run that practice, because anybody can hide certain things when they don't have you, but when you get there, then you're like, whoa. This is not the same coach that recruited me, So I try to tell kids to make sure you understand and get a chance, a glimpse of looking at him on the sideline, how his demeanor when you make a turnover. Is he always running down the bench to pull the player out, or is he one of those coaches saying, that's okay, you'll make up for the next one? Is he encouraging you? Is he building you up? So I tell kids to always look for the signs, and then you make the decision on whether you want to be with that coach or not.
Right. A couple of quick things about him, then we'll get moving on. But one memory I have, I think you guys were like at Northwestern or something, and only up by like 3 or something towards the end of the game, and battled it at 360. And I felt like Henson's head was just going to explode. Like, sorry, I got to stop.
That's all right.
I'm sorry. I had to laugh. So I told you I got a kind of a cold, so yeah, that made me laugh. So I got a little cough there. But yeah, I remember looking at the sideline. I was, and then I also, but I feel like that's one thing Underwood has done, because you have to adjust to your personnel and and try to fit that style of the kind of players you have. And he had Kofi for 3 years, so a lot of inside posts like that. Now it's more free flowing because he wants to bring in more kind of a faster pace and things like that, you got to adjust to the personnel you got. And if you got a bunch of studs like you guys running up and down, I feel like now you did score a lot of points. I mean, hell, you guys were like the highest scoring team in the history of the school, I think. But it still seems like, I don't want to say a missed opportunity, but I mean, it was he did, he had his style, and that's how you had to do it. So but
yeah, I mean, that's why I said I'm not going to really knock on it. I really just sometimes I blame myself because I didn't do my homework, right? I got excited, but I didn't do my homework. I did my homework from watching Syracuse and Georgetown because the Big East was more of a up and down transition type, conference, right? The Big Ten was more gritty,
Oh yeah.
So which was not my style, and I say this to say that that's on me. That's not on Coach Henson, So that's why I say I'm not knocking the way Coach Henson, did, because if I'd have knew from the early on, from looking at it, I would have knew this was what type of coach he was.
Right.
So that's why I say I'm not knocking him on his style, because that's who he was and what he was all about. It was his way, no way. So I don't want your listeners to think that Coach Marcus Liberty is knocking, he's trashing Coach Henson. No, I'm not. That's who Coach Henson was.
Right.
So did toward the end, like before he left this earth, we talked a little bit. It's funny. I think I had a better relationship with his wife Mary, because she was so bubbly and always happy. When she see the guys coming around, and Coach Coombs and Coach Nagy, I would talk to them, throughout the years, when I retired playing, and Coach Collins, of course. I would always talk to them, but I didn't talk to Coach Henson as much. The only time when I talked to him is when I came, on visits back to the university, and he was there, so we'd talk a little bit. It wasn't like big conversations, like, hey, Coach, how you doing, and this and that, and that was it. But the other coaches, they were, I think, because those are the coaches that was, in the trenches with you, when things get bad, those are the coaches that come and, talk to you. But if I was ever a head college coach, I'm going to make sure that I build those relationships with the players and understand, where are they coming from, and how can I help them be, a better basketball player and a better student athlete.
Right. That second year, when you averaged 17.8 and 7 boards, did he kind of give you a little more freedom? Because that second year, it was Kendall and you pretty much, right, as the two top scorers. Kendall averaged like around 20. You averaged about 18, looks like. So. But
John, think about this. You didn't really have no choice.
Right.
It was really just, as far as putting the ball in the basket, it was me and Kendall. Larry Smith got into some trouble, so he didn't play that year. I think if Larry Smith would have played, and I think if Isiah Thomas didn't get in that situation that he was in,
right,
we would have really had a nice squad to do some damage in the tournament. So we ended up losing in the first round of the tournament. But I think if we'd had those two players, we'd have went pretty far in the tournament. So yeah, me and Kendall had to take the bulk of the scoring. I think early on I was leading the team in scoring, and then toward the end, of course, Coach Henson, Kendall's the senior, and if you know the Coach Henson tradition is he loves his senior basketball players. He trusts them to do he give them a little bit more freedom to do things out there. And Kendall was the guy, and then I was the number 2 guy on that team.
Yeah. When you go into the draft, okay, let me ask you this. Let's say you are at a college where you are, I don't want to say happy, but you know what I mean. Let's say you're somewhere and
they let you play your game, and I'm doing what what I
Right.
need to do.
Do you stay for your senior year, or do you think you still go into the draft no matter what? Or if that makes sense.
If I was with another program,
Yeah, I mean, if you were somewhere, okay, I guess I'll say this: did you leave after your junior year to go into the NBA draft because of your situation at Illinois, or do you feel like if you were somewhere where you were maybe had a little bit more freedom, things like that, and enjoying it a little bit more, would you have stayed through all the way through college?
yes, that crossed my mind actually. That whether do I stay or go. But then I got in situations where, growing up in the inner city, parents, not making a whole lot of money. The dog situation, I don't know if you remember that. I had some dogs that ate up the apartment, was going to, be sued and so everything was going through my mind. Like, what do I do? Do I stay for my senior year? Because I know Coach Henson lets his seniors, ball out, so I didn't know what to do. So it came down to the family, finances, and I made that decision. But to go back to your question, if I was with another program, another college, I could have been like a Carmelo Anthony,
Mm-hmm.
I got the freedom, possibly, I don't, I'm just saying, I don't know what would happen. It could have been that type of player that could have took a team to the championship and had some other great players around, and won the national championship and said, you know what, I'm out of here, but I remember a story. It wasn't really a story. It was me playing in high school at the Nike camp, and Doug Collins, he wrote an article in the paper, and he says, man, watching him play, man, this kid is ready for the NBA. It didn't register to me that, man, he's talking about I can play in the NBA, coming out of high school.
Yeah.
Right. So then you see guys later on doing that. If I had the people around me and saying, yeah, and you constantly hearing, yeah, you're an NBA player, or you can play in the NBA coming out of high school, I probably would have left.
Right.
But I didn't have nobody in my ear telling me that. Everybody was saying, go to college, go to college. So if I probably went to another college, yes, I probably would have came out anyway. Right.
Gotcha.
Because of the numbers, those wasn't bad numbers that I was putting up, and I was playing out of position.
Did he still have you on the block, or did he let you go outside at all, or was it?
Yeah. Even on that '89 team, I went outside.
Right. I'm looking at stuff here. You got you shot over 50% from the field too. So that's really, really good. But it looks like you took like a little under 1 3 a game. It looks like.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't shoot a lot of threes. No, that's why I said, because I still practice with the bigs. It's just I was a starter now. Think about it. You're a starter, of course your number's going to go up. You're playing more minutes. That's what any player that has that type of talent. I still had the talent, to play. The skills, that if you're not constantly working on your dribbling skills and your outside shooting skills, you're not going to be a good shooter, So, but I was really good around the basket because that's what we practice a lot, low post turn, spin, baseline, off the glass,
Yeah.
One dribble pull-ups, those things, he was constantly working with us with the big. So I was doing some of that still, but as far as the guard play and the skills that everybody saw me do and play, those were kind of taken away from me a little bit.
Yeah. I just remember you were one of those guys that it seemed like you'd go up and get a dunk, and it just seemed like even when you dunked it, you were still going up. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like I don't know. Again, I was little at the time. It just seems like you guys almost had too much talent, and he wasn't sure what to do. So he's just like, well, let's do what I've always done, and that'll be our system, and we'll see.
Yeah.
How we do. But did you? Before we get into NBA stuff, who'd you hate the most, like Big Ten, like at the time? Because there's a lot of great players back then, a lot of big rivalries back then. It was who was it? Indiana? Was it Michigan? Who was your Yeah. Who'd you hate the most?
Hey, you know what? I didn't hate no one. Like as far as like teams, I just love playing. I just wanted to play.
Right.
It didn't matter who. If it was Iowa, if it was Iowa with Ed Horton and BJ, Armstrong, or it was Michigan with Glenn Rice and those guys, Northwestern. I mean, it didn't matter to me. I never got caught up in that type of stuff. Even when I was in high school, I didn't. So.
Yeah.
I guess that's just the way I was programmed as a little kid, that no matter who you play against, there's no ups, no downs. You got to get up for every game, regardless of who you're playing against. So that was always my motto, that I didn't care. So I didn't get caught up in rivals and, well, Iowa, we don't like Iowa, or we don't like Indiana because of Bobby Knight and Coach Henson's, beef that they had. I never got caught up in that. But some people do, they get that extra hype, and I never did that, And I actually, talked to, before he left this place, Bobby Knight, a couple times, because Dick Lytle lives here, and he was good friends with Bobby Knight. And he was like, Bobby Knight, you can't believe who I got in the car with me. And he's like, who? And he's like, Marcus Liberty. He said, yeah, we used to beat Illinois all the time. And I was like, no. It was always kind of a split. We would beat y'all at home, and y'all would beat us at our home sometime. And then one year we got both, So don't say that, Bobby. I said you're losing it now, man. You didn't do that. But he was always talking about, we couldn't figure out that he was in his offensive set was just a read and react kind of offense. And I was like, well, Coach Henson was a pretty doggone good defensive coach. We pretty much knew what y'all were doing. Right.
And that's not what it was. It was just motion that pick, But I'm that Nick Anderson shot there. Like if he forgot that, then he's not
right. That was a great game too. That was.
Yeah, that's one of those. I remember where I was and everything. But did you? Okay, well let me ask you this then. Who's the toughest guy you maybe had to guard while you were at Illinois, like a Big Ten guy? It doesn't have to be Big Ten, I guess. It could be anybody. But
man, I was guarding Lloyd Vault, who was 200 and 30 pounds of muscle, man, and Steve Scheffler,
was he that big lefty from Purdue?
Yeah, man, I was guarding.
I forgot about that guy. Yeah.
Man, and he was, you talk about strong, man. I can remember guarding Perry Carter from Ohio State. Every now and then I would, get, a switch out with Glenn Rice or somebody, but most of the time I was guarding the bigs, helping with the bigs and trying to use my quickness, because I knew I couldn't guard them strength for strength because they was that much stronger than me. But I did what I had to do because I wanted to be out there on that court, like I said. So I would say those type of players, the inside post players, were some of the hardest. Like Perry Carter was like really strong. Ohio State, guarding him and trying to keep him, from going to his go-to moves, and so those were kind of some of the toughest matchups that I had.
Yeah. See, the thing is too, like they should have to guard you too. So that's why, like, if anytime you got somebody quick down there having to guard somebody bigger than you, it's like if it should go the other way too. Like they got to guard you too, and you should just be able to.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah, I know exactly. I keep on talking about. I guess. Yeah. Anyways, okay, so let's get into NBA stuff a little bit here. You get drafted by the Nuggets, and maybe talk about like just on the court, off the court, whatever. Just how much of a shock or whatever adjustment is it whenever you go into the NBA?
Right. Well, it was 1990. Put my name in the draft, and I can remember I worked out for Milwaukee Bucks. Didn't work out for the Denver Nuggets. Worked out for Portland. Worked out for the Lakers. Worked out for Phoenix. So I worked out for the New York Knicks. I worked out for a few teams. that was, interested in me. And I remember on draft day, Milwaukee Bucks calls my house and says, leave your phone lines open. We're going to take you with the number. They either had 15 or 16 pick in the first round. So they said they was going to take me. So I'm excited. I'm like, yes, okay, yeah. And that pick comes around and they says, the Milwaukee Bucks select Terry Mills out of Michigan. So I was like, whoa, that was a shock, because why would they call me and then tell me? So what happened in between? I wish I knew the lady's name who called me and talked to Coach Harris, who was the coach at the time.
Bill Harris.
Yeah, to see
Yeah.
what happened really, at that moment. But I never got an opportunity to really ask that question to him. So now the draft is coming toward the end. I'm in my bed now, man. I'm like asleep, I'm not watching the draft no more. And the 41st pick come, and it's like the Denver Nuggets select. Was it 41st or 42nd pick?
42, yeah.
Yeah, 40. Yeah, it was the 42nd pick. The Denver Nuggets select Marcus Liberty. My mom wakes me up, and then they replayed it, and I'm like, oh, okay. I said, I don't remember working out for Denver at all, so I don't know what this is going to be. But the owner, Peter Bino, he was from Chicago. Well, I don't know if he was from Chicago, but he lived in Chicago. He was a businessman, a successful businessman, and he was a minority owner of the Nuggets. So he was like, wow, man, I'm glad he said, I'm not glad you slipped, but I'm glad we got you. I was like, all right. He said, because I watched you play, at the university, Then I get a call from Doug Moe, who's the head coach at the Nuggets. Mm-hmm. And he was like, you're going to fit perfect in my system, right? So I get down there, and we start practicing, and I'm like, man, I'm loving this because he let me get the ball and go and push the ball and dunk and look away passes. I'm like, wow, I like this. And then back then it wasn't guaranteed second, round contracts. So I had to go put myself in the summer league. This is still up under Doug Moe's system. So I think it was in San Antonio. Yeah, it was in San Antonio, the summer league then. So we go play in San Antonio, and when I tell you I'm destroying, like I'm dominating, people like, man, I didn't know this kid could play like this because I'm not under that system no more. Right. I started practicing back in the summer in Chicago, working on my game, getting back to, to who I used to be. Right. And now people are like, wow, man, he's dunking, he's shooting a jump shot, he's throwing look away passes, he's throwing long bounce passes from half court, people picking it up, laying it up. My agent, he calls me. Well, actually, he calls the general man. No, Doug Moe was there. He called Doug Moe, and Doug Moe gives me his phone, and we go into another room. And my agent says, what are you doing down there, man? I said, what you mean? You told me to go out there and play. I'm going out here playing. And he says, well, they just offered you, a 3-year guaranteed contract. So congratulations. I'm like, oh, wow, thanks. Doug Moe gets out the phone, he starts talking to me. He said, man, you're looking good out there. And to make a long story short, we get back to Denver. They fired, the coach. Doug Moe has been fired. I'm like, what?
Man, yeah.
So I'm like, man, here it is, a coach that believed in me. He was giving me some confidence, and I like the system. And then they bring in Paul Westhead.
Yes.
Paul Westhead, same kind of system, but I don't think Paul Westhead got an opportunity to play his people. Like me, Chris Jackson, whose name is now Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.
Right.
We came in together, right? So his system suits me and him. But so somehow he I don't know, he got convinced to playing the older guys, Orlando Woolridge and, Walter Davis and, T.R. Dunn and, Michael Adams. These guys were, good players. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think they could run that system like he wanted them to run. Blair Rasmussen, who was, a tall guy that he ended up tearing his rotator cuff because coach wanted him to take the ball out immediately and throw it down the court. So he got hurt a couple of times, man, doing that. But I just didn't think the system was great, but I don't think he had the right players out there, doing the system, and I think he didn't want to step on no toes. So he let it ride, and he didn't win a lot of games, but he only lasted 1 year, and then they ended up firing him.
Right. Yeah. Well, he was at Loyola. Very much. Yeah. So he didn't bring that same running and gunning like at Loyola, or he tried to, or
he tried to, but
just with the wrong guys.
That's with the wrong guys, So
you're trying it with a bunch of 35-year-olds when you got like when you got like 22-year-olds ready to go,
Yeah. So he had some young guys. He had Terry Mills was actually on that team because Terry Mills didn't go to Milwaukee when they drafted him. He went over to Greece. So he came back to the U.S. and Denver picked him up. So you got Terry Mills, you got myself, you got Cadillac Anderson, you got some guys that could run up and down that court, and kind of run that system, like he wanted it. But I think he was put in a hard place, man, because those veterans, man, they didn't practice. So how you gonna get used to the system if you really not practice? You're not really running up and down the court like we are, like the young guys. So the young guys would do it, and I remember a story, Walter Davis. It was funny, man, and I'll share this story with you, and you'll get a kick out of it. He says, "Come on, Walter, give it to me, give it to me." Walter Davis turned around and looked at him and said, "Hold up, man, time out. Coach, you want me to give it to you in practice or in the game tomorrow?" He said, "In the game, baby, in the game."
Yeah, exactly.
That's how they got out of the practice most of the time, the older guys, man. But I thought that was real funny because he was like, "Coach, you want me to give it to you in practice or do you want me to give it to you in the game tomorrow?"
Right, exactly. Yeah, because Walter Davis, his career had to be winding down at that point, and he's probably like,
But one of the best shooters in person that I've seen besides Chris Jackson.
Right.
Them two guys in practice, when I say didn't miss, they didn't miss. So I enjoy watching, guys as specialists, as they call them now, because that's what they both were, a specialist as shooters.
Right.
And seeing that up close in person, man, was remarkable.
Yeah. Kind of like Steph's dad, Del Curry, kind of those type of guys.
Mm-hmm.
Dale Ellis, guys like that. Back then, they just, great shooters.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this though, and those 3 years in Denver. I mean, you started 18 games your rookie year, 13 your second year, 32 games your third year, and then you 15.4 minutes a game your rookie year, but then over 20 minutes a game those second 2 years. And then you averaged 9.3 and 4.1 boards. So I mean, an 8.1 and 4.3. So you had definitely a good contributor to those teams there in Denver for 3 years. So
yeah, Dan Issel was my probably my favorite coach. Besides Doug Moe, but Doug Moe really wasn't the coach. When I started playing, like in the summer league, that he wasn't even the coach because you couldn't coach. But it was his system. But Dan Issel was actually the coach, and I think he was the first one that actually believed in me because I remember him commentating some of the games before he got the head coaching job. And he was always say, man, I'm going to give him I don't know why they don't give Marcus Liberty a good opportunity to be out there on that court because I'm watching practice and he can really play. So when he got the job, he started me. The first, I want to say 13 games. I was 8 games or something like that. I started. And then Mark Macon was high draft pick. So how the politics go.
Oh, yeah. A little guard out Temple.
Yep. So these guys got to play. So they put Mark, I think they had me at the 2, and Reggie at the 3, or Reggie Williams. Me and Reggie Williams were on that team, and we were starting. So Reggie was either at the 2 or the 3, and I was either at the other spot, right? So I was playing real good. I mean, the numbers was double figures and all of that. And then, from the higher ups, we drafted Mark Macon, and as a lottery, you got to play him. And so, who was the left out guy? They're not gonna take Reggie Williams out, so they took me out, and I became, a guy that would come off the bench. But when I was starting, I was putting up some doggone good numbers. And then Mutombo got hurt 1 year, and then I ended up finishing the season. And the numbers, if you look at the starting, when I was starting, the numbers were like 16, 17 points almost a game. Yeah. So I knew I could play in the NBA. It's just when you in that mixture of, guys that they gotta play and, this and that, and then when it was time for me to sign another contract, I didn't sign the long contract. I only signed a 1-year contract. And then, people were saying that, maybe Bernie Bickerstaff at the time was like, okay, we'll show you. And he ended up trading me to Detroit. And then once I got to Detroit, I didn't play at all. And, when you're not playing, you're not getting looked at. And that was pretty much my last year playing in '94 in the NBA. I mean, I made some tryouts and tried to come back and make some moves, but by then mentally, I was gone. So I knew I didn't have a chance then. If you mentally not into it, you're not going to do it. You're not going to be successful at it.
Yeah. Was Chuck Daly still at Detroit?
No, that was Chaney.
Don Chaney?
Yeah, from Houston. He was the coach. And those, even playing with Detroit, it wasn't they had 3 of the guys still left. Bill Laimbeer was still there. Joe Dumars and Isiah Thomas was still there. And I remember a lot of stories. That's why I knew who was running the team. I was like, man, I'm watching Joe Dumars and Isiah Thomas walking to the gym, and if they ever hit us, they'll probably get a kick out of it, especially Joe Dumars, because I was talking to him. I said, why you not dressed up? He said, oh, coach already know when I wear these shoes here, I'm not practicing. And Isiah Thomas does the same thing. They wear a particular shoe that signals to the coach without even saying anything. He knows that they ain't practicing because of what kind of shoes they have on.
Oh, my.
I was like, wow, okay, all right. So, and I remember one time, Lindsey Hunter from Jackson State, he took the ball. We was on 5-on-5. That's when Isiah and Joe was practicing. They didn't have the particular shoes that they wasn't going to practice in. They had their practice shoes on. And Lindsey Hunter strips the ball out of Isiah's hands and goes down the other way and dunks it. And Isiah stops, says, throw me that ball. Give me that ball. But he said it in another way. He said, give me that F ball.
Right.
And so he gets the ball. He goes to the other end and shoots a free throw. And Lindsey looking at him like, what are you doing? He said, I got an effing foul.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking like, man, that wasn't no foul. And Lindsey was like, man, I didn't foul you. And so we go to the coach and said, man, that's not a foul. He said, you heard the man. He called a foul.
See,
So right then and there, I was like, I know who's running this team.
Yeah.
Isiah Thomas is running this team, And so
that sounds like well, I mean, there's plenty of proof throughout his career that's the kind of. I remember when the Bulls finally eliminated them, he just walked off, without, like when the game wasn't even over yet, and when the Bulls finally beat them in the conference finals, and all that stuff. So that's you've heard about him being kind of like that.
Yeah, but I wasn't really upset at that when I saw that on television because that's how. The image you gotta if you're gonna say you're the bad boys, you gotta be the bad boys all the way through, right? So I think that's what they was trying to show. Like, man, we ain't shaking y'all hands, man. We tried to beat y'all, and now we gotta shake y'all hands and congratulate you. So they had to live up to that image to me, to do that. But to say, to see him actually run that team, man, it's like Man, that's my first taste of seeing a player actually controlling the whole team. Like what we eat, where you sit at on the plane, all that, man. It's like, because I was with Denver, we didn't have our own plane. Detroit was, to me, I think was one of the first teams to have their own plane. You know, so that was back in 92, 90, maybe their first championship that I think they had their own plane. So I was like, man, we got our own plane? This is cool. But then I'm trying to just sit down. It's like, no, you can't sit there. That's up to the seat. Then I sit the next one. No, you can't do that one either. I'm like, well, would somebody tell me where I'm supposed to sit at?
Yeah. That's interesting, stuff like that to hear, because when you get done, they win 2 titles. It was Chuck Daly. Chuck Daly's not there anymore. They're bringing Don Chaney, and yeah, I'm sure Isiah's just like, okay, I'm running this now, and that's not right, but I'm sure that doesn't surprise me though.
Right. So that was my end of my NBA career. Then I went overseas and started playing, another 6 or 7 years, and then I eventually hung it up.
Yeah. I'm looking at all those, some of those teams. I've talked to some other guys, too, I've had on here about playing overseas. What was that? I mean, as far as just like culture and things like that of playing in other countries, was that a big shock to you?
Yeah, and then you hear stories like, I knew some people that went overseas and played before I, decided to go. And they were like, man, you're going to get a nice car. They're going to get you a villa. And so I'm excited though. So when I got an opportunity to go play, and I'm like, man, I didn't get no nice car, and I'm living in an apartment that I don't know if this is what you're talking about.
Right.
So I think the guy was talking about different countries, like in Italy and those countries that would take care of their players. And there was some, like I went to Turkey, I went to France. When I went to France, I got hurt my first year there, so I didn't really play as much there. But that was my first country, so that was a culture shock to me, because I'm like, I didn't know, the language. And over there, even though they know English, they're not speaking it, the French. So it was kind of, a culture shock to me, and I was like, man. But basketball, it still played the same way. It wasn't different. It was actually, I had to take a couple of steps back, because it was more like college, the way they were playing. It wasn't like the NBA. We would get called travel a lot, because they were saying you trying to advance the ball by pushing it in front and then picking up the pivot foot. So they would always call that on guys, especially guys that played in the NBA.
Huh. I've heard a couple of them too, like being American, did that hurt you sometimes with refs and stuff like that?
Not as much.
Yeah.
What I learned, playing over there, and if you ever watch me play, I was never one of those guys that wanted to be like, when you make a dunk and scream, but they love that over in Europe.
Yeah.
When you dunk and you're dancing and doing all type of stuff, the crowd gets into it, they get excited. But that was never me, So I would make a dunk and I would just run back down on the other end and let's play some D. Come on,
That's how it should be,
But that's I don't know if they still do it like that, but when I was playing, that's what they love, those type of players. So you could be an average player and you can do those dunks, and dance and flip and do all type of stuff out there on the court. You may have a long career over in Europe.
Yeah. Well, I guess now, you've after you've hung them up and everything, maybe let the people know kind of what you're up to these days, if you don't mind.
Well, it's a journey, but I have my own program, basketball program here called Liberty Edge. And the reason I put the edge on the end of my last name is because I wanted to give, today's youth an edge from some of the things that I learned throughout my, basketball career. And So I'm giving back doing that. I got a non-for-profit as well where I sponsor kids to play or to come to my camps and participate and learn how to play the game. I'm teaching a lot of fundamentals because that's what I was taught, and I don't want to just roll the ball out and tell kids to play. To me, that's hurting the kids in the long run. And I think that's why we see a lot of the things that we see in the NBA right now, that they have the talent, they're super athletic, but some of them don't have, the fundamentals tight. What I mean by that, understanding how to play off two, and instead of just going up every time and dunking the basketball. It's exciting basketball, this generation, but I think the fundamentals have been left behind. So I definitely teach that a lot, and mentor. I want to be a big brother to a lot of the kids and women that come through my program, to teach them the ins and outs of what could happen, in your transitioning from each level of basketball that you play. So I do that as well, and truly love it. I'm still on the court, but I don't play like pickup basketball or anything. But I'm always in the gym shooting, just getting my thoughts right when I shoot. It's just something about when I get the basketball and I go in the gym and start shooting. Memories come back, things that I've learned, and then I continue to teach to the next generation. So those are the things that I'm doing: Liberty Edge basketball, mentoring, helping kids pick, whatever school they want if they want some advice from me. So I do a lot of that.
Yeah. That's probably the best noise in the world, that ball going through the basket.
Oh, wow.
Good noise. Yeah. You were talking about fundamentals and stuff. Okay. The NBA right now, hang on, I got to cough one more time.
Go ahead.
Told you, man. Too much yelling. Okay. But who do you like watching right now? Like, it's just from put your fan hat on for a second. Who do you enjoy watching the most, like in the NBA?
Kevin Durant. I love watching Kevin Durant play. I like Booker as well, Devin Booker. Before it was Kobe Bryant, Kobe to me, before he left this place. But yeah, it'd have to be Kevin Durant, man. Seeing a 7-footer do the things that he do out there, and I can't forget about Luka either. I love Luka.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say Luka, because he's not the fastest, right? And people are always saying this generation is much faster, stronger. But if you look at him, he's not fast.
Right.
Joker, he's not. But they have the fundamentals. Fundamentals, that's why I tell people, fundamentals outweigh any talent and any athleticism that you have, because the IQ, you got to have a high IQ to have, the great fundamentals as well, because you can outthink and outsmart a lot of, those athletic players.
Right. If you can, like the Joker, if you can be the best player on the planet and have his athleticism, then that fundamentals and footwork and all that stuff are extremely important, because he's not going to outjump anybody and he's not going to outrun anybody, but he's
nope.
But
no. And listen, like I said, Kevin Durant, has that. Kevin Garnett had that, the fundamentals, and he was athletic and talented. So it's a bunch of guys that have it, but I just don't like when people are afraid to tell kids no. Dunking is okay, and if you want to excite the crowd every now and then when you get a chance to dunk, but if you get your fundamentals down, like down pat, that no one can stop you along with your athleticism. So that's why I think the fundamentals are so important. Your footwork, your hand speed, how to fake with the ball and how to get your feet set quick, and all that stuff matters, man. And I think that's that's the lost art in some, not all, but in some.
Right.
I think we need to get back to that, you know. And a lot of trainers out here, I think, are hitting it on the nose, and then you have some trainers just say, you know what, it's an opportunity to make some money, so let me just say I'm a trainer and not really qualified to be that trainer.
Right. Well, and there's so many ball handling drills and things like that, and that's fine, but you know, like with young kids, it's like, I don't want you to dribble. I don't want you to be James Harden, dribble 16 times and then shoot the ball. You know, you need to learn.
Right.
You know, you need to learn You need to learn to pass and cut instead of get screen.
Yeah. Well, you know, like our generation, and I know that's the way I was taught. Get the ball out of your hands. You want to advance the ball as quick as possible, so then you can get into your whatever movement and whatever sets that I'm going to have. You know, and if you can go straight to the basket, go. And then in your half court sets, you want to, you know, constantly work on that one dribble, two dribble, pull ups. You know, but with the analytics, you know, they kind of took that out of, you know, play because they said the two is not important, the three is. You know, so it's different. It's just a different, you know, game. The game has evolved into something completely different than it was in the 80s, you know. So as a fan, an old school fan, of course, we're going to think the way we think. That's why I said, but do I enjoy it? Yeah, I enjoy watching it. But it's just like, man, whatever happened to that mid-range jump shot, man, that was beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. 2 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. But man, I gotta tell you, this has been amazing. I'm looking at the clock or at my time here. This is probably the longest one I think I've done so far. So that's good because I got a lot of things. Yeah, it's great to talk to you, and you were great, man. Giving a lot of great stories and great stuff. So I'm sure all the Illini Nation will love listening to it. So.
Man, and that's one of the biggest to me fan base, man, that deserves a winning basketball program because, you know, they had some ups, they had some downs, and now we back up again. So, man, nothing but praise to Coach Underwood and the coaching staff at the university. And I look for more and more, you know, Big Ten champions and getting further and further, and hopefully one day winning that national championship.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Well, you ever make your way back, get a hold of me. Maybe we can do something. I'd like to start doing stuff with some of you guys where like we find the game on YouTube and like do like a live watch along and like watch it. So kind of like watch the game through you guys' eyes. I think that's something like that'd be kind of fun. So.
Oh yeah, kind of like what Kobe did with the NBA on the detail.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I think that would be cool, man. Just to start something like that, and I'm more than, you know, happy to be a part of that if you do that, and if I'm ever back that way, definitely we can do that.
All right, sounds great, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. You were awesome.
All right, John, and have a good day, man, and hope your team, you know, do well this year.
All right, cool. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, appreciate it. All right.